You think black soldiers during World War II ate the same bland rations as everyone else? Think again. From segregated mess halls to makeshift kitchens overseas, black troops created breakfasts that carried heritage and resilience in every bite. Here are 30 forgotten breakfasts that fueled black soldiers during WW2. Cornmeal mush with sorghum syrup was one of the first breakfasts many black soldiers remembered from home when they shipped out to training camps. The thick porridge was made by slowly cooking stone-ground cornmeal until it reached a smooth consistency that could warm the stomach for hours. Sorghum syrup, dark and rich with earthy sweetness, was poured generously over the top, creating a dish that cost almost nothing but delivered energy and comfort. For soldiers from the rural South, this breakfast carried memories of family kitchens and cast iron pots on wood stoves. Even in segregated mess halls where ingredients were limited, resourceful black cooks found ways to recreate this dish, stretching supplies to ensure every man had something familiar before facing the challenges ahead. Salt pork and grits became a cornerstone breakfast for black troops stationed at domestic bases during the war years. The salt pork was sliced thin and fried slowly until the fat rendered out and edges turned crispy, filling mess halls with smoky aroma. Grits were cooked in large batches, stirred constantly, then served alongside the pork with rendered fat drizzled over for richness. This combination provided protein and carbohydrates needed for grueling training exercises that began before dawn. Black cooks in segregated kitchens took pride in preparing this dish properly, knowing good breakfast could lift spirits and strengthen bodies. The grits absorbed the salty, smoky flavor, creating a simple but satisfying meal that connected soldiers to their southern roots while preparing for battles overseas. Biscuits and sawmill gravy carried the taste of Appalachian and southern kitchens into military mess halls where black soldiers gathered each morning. The biscuits were made from flour, lard, and buttermilk when available, rolled and cut by hand before baking until golden. The gravy started with pan drippings from whatever meat had been cooked, thickened with flour, and stretched with milk into creamy sauce seasoned with black pepper. This was filling and familiar food, providing comfort during uncertain times. Black mess hall cooks understood that breakfast was more than nutrition. It was a reminder of mothers and grandmothers who served this same dish at wooden tables back home. The gravy soaked into biscuits, softening them into something warm that stayed with the man through morning drills. Fried fatback with scrambled eggs was a breakfast that stretched limited resources while delivering maximum energy for black soldiers in training camps. Fatback was sliced and fried until crispy outside while staying tender within, releasing rendered fat used to cook the eggs. The eggs were scrambled in that flavorful fat, picking up smoky, salty richness that made each bite memorable. This was economical cooking at its finest, turning inexpensive ingredients into something substantial and satisfying. For soldiers who grew up during the Depression, this breakfast represented survival wisdom passed through generations. The combination of protein and calories provided sustained energy for physical demands. Black cooks in segregated mess halls made this dish with care, knowing it carried both nourishment and the comfort of home. Rice and tomato gravy was a breakfast reflecting gula geechee and low country traditions many black soldiers carried into military service. The gravy was made from canned tomatoes simmered with onions, seasoned and thickened until it clung to each grain of rice. This dish was affordable and practical for mess hall cooking while still tasting like home. For soldiers from South Carolina, Georgia, and coastal regions, rice was a staple that sustained their communities for generations. The tomato gravy added brightness that cut through starchiness, creating balanced breakfast that satisfied without heaviness. Black cooks understood cultural significance, preparing it with same attention their mothers and grandmothers showed. It was heritage served on metal trays in military cafeterias. Blackstrap molasses stirred into warm milk was a morning drink, providing iron and energy for black soldiers facing demanding days of training. The molasses, dark and thick with slightly bitter edge, was spooned into heated milk and stirred until liquid turned deep brown. This drink was nutritious and economical, offering essential minerals that helped to maintain strength when fresh food was scarce. Many soldiers had grown up drinking this at home, where molasses was cheaper than sugar and provided benefits. Mothers understood instinctively. The warmth and distinctive flavor brought comfort during early mornings in unfamiliar barracks far from home. For black troops facing discrimination while serving their country, small comforts helped maintain morale. It was sustenance carrying heritage in every sip. Johnny cakes, fried in bacon drippings, connected black soldiers to traditions stretching back through Southern and Caribbean foodways. These simple cornmeal cakes were made from coarse meal mixed with water and salt, shaped by hand and fried in rendered bacon fat until outsides turned golden and crispy. The drippings added smoky richness that elevated humble cakes into something memorable and satisfying. For soldiers who grew up eating Johnny cakes at family tables, this breakfast carried the weight of history and comfort of familiar flavors. Black cooks in military kitchens understood the importance of these connections, preparing cakes with same care their mothers showed. The crispy exterior gave way to tender, slightly gritty interior that paired perfectly with whatever else was available. This was heritage food, fueling both body and spirit. Hardtack soaked in coffee was a battlefield breakfast black soldiers learned to appreciate during overseas deployment when a fresh food was impossible. The hard, dry biscuits were nearly inedible alone, but soaking them in hot coffee softened them enough to chew while adding bitterness that made them palatable. This was survival food, yet black troops found ways to make it work by dunking hardtack until it became something approaching breakfast. The coffee was often weak, stretched to serve many men, but its warmth provided psychological comfort in cold trenches. Soldiers shared techniques for softening hardtack, passing knowledge along just as families passed down recipes at home. This breakfast represented adaptation and resilience, turning military necessity into sustenance that kept men going. Powdered egg scrambles became a reality of military breakfast that black soldiers learned to transform through creativity. The dehydrated eggs required water to reconstitute, producing rubbery texture and flat flavor compared to fresh eggs. But black cooks in segregated mess halls improved these scrambles by adding rendered fat, onions when available, and generous seasoning that masked artificial taste. The eggs were cooked slowly, stirred constantly for best texture from difficult ingredients. For soldiers who remember mother's fluffy scrambles from fresh eggs, these military versions were poor substitute, yet still provided essential protein. The creativity applied to improving powdered eggs reflected broader resilience of black communities, turning inadequate resources into something that could sustain. Oatmeal with canned evaporated milk was a mess hall breakfast that reminded black soldiers of simpler mornings at home. The oats were cooked in large quantities, often becoming thick from sitting in warming trays, but evaporated milk brought richness and creaminess that improved both texture and flavor. Sugar was added when available, along with whatever dried fruit or preserves might be on hand. For soldiers who grew up eating oatmeal as affordable, filling breakfast, this military version felt familiar even when prepared industrially. Black cooks understood that proper preparation made all the difference. Stirring oats carefully, and ensuring milk was distributed evenly. The warmth on cold mornings provided comfort beyond nutrition, connecting men to memories of family kitchens and mothers who fed them before war changed everything. Canned corned beef hash was a breakfast appearing frequently in mess halls where black soldiers gathered before morning duties. The hash came from metal cans, a mixture of shredded corned beef and diced potatoes fried in large skillets until edges turned crispy and brown. Black cooks added onions when available and seasoned generously with black pepper to elevate the canned taste. The hash was hearty and filling, providing protein and carbohydrates that sustained men through hours of training. For soldiers far from home, the salty richness became familiar comfort, even from industrial ingredients. The crispy bits at the bottom of the pan were especially prized, fought over quietly among men who understood that small pleasures mattered during wartime. This was military food made better by black cooks who cared. Fried salt herring with cornbread connected black soldiers to coastal communities and fishing traditions of the Atlantic seaboard. The herring arrived preserved in salt, requiring soaking before being dredged in cornmeal and fried until skin turned crispy. Cornbread, baked in cast iron, accompanied the fish, its slightly sweet crumb balancing salty richness. This combination was affordable and practical for feeding large numbers in segregated mess facilities. For soldiers from Virginia, the Carolinas, and Maryland, this breakfast carried memories of family tables where saltfish had been a staple for generations. The protein from fish and carbohydrates from cornbread provided sustained energy. Black cooks prepared this dish with knowledge passed through their communities, turning simple ingredients into something meaningful. Stewed prunes with biscuits appeared on military breakfast tables as a practical solution to nutrition for black soldiers living on restricted rations. The dried prunes were simmered slowly in water with a touch of sugar until they became soft and syrupy, their natural sweetness intensifying through cooking. Served alongside fresh biscuits, the prunes provided fiber and vitamins, often lacking in military diets heavy on preserved meats and starches. For soldiers whose mothers served stewed fruit at home, this breakfast offered familiar comfort. The dark, rich syrup soaked into warm biscuits, creating simple but satisfying combination. Black mess hall workers understood that this dish served both health and morale, providing sweetness during times when fresh fruit was impossible to obtain. Spam and eggs became one of the most common breakfasts for black soldiers stationed both stateside and overseas during war years. The canned meat was sliced thick and fried until edges caramelized, developing crispy exterior contrasting with soft, salty interior. Eggs were cooked in the same pan, absorbing rendered fat and taking on distinctive flavor of processed meat. This combination was reliable and filling, appearing on mess hall trays morning after morning until soldiers knew its taste by heart. For black troops facing discrimination in military facilities, hot breakfast of spam and eggs represented at least one small comfort. The protein kept men fueled through demanding days. Black cooks made the best of industrial ingredients, frying spam until it achieved the crispiness soldiers craved. Sweet potato biscuits carried the taste of Southern farm kitchens into military mess halls where black soldiers sought connection to home. The biscuits were made by folding mashed sweet potatoes into standard dough, creating slightly orange-tinted bread with natural sweetness and tender texture. These required more effort than plain biscuits, but black cooks understood their value for morale when sweet potatoes were available. The natural sugars caramelized slightly during baking, creating edges that were crispy while centers remained soft and creamy. Soldiers from the rural South recognized this as grandmother's cooking, a taste that transported them from barracks to family tables. Sweet potato biscuits needed no accompaniment, though butter or molasses made them even more satisfying. Creamed chipped beef on toast was a military breakfast that black soldiers encountered, frequently known informally by names too colorful for polite company. Thin slices of dried salted beef were rehydrated and simmered in a white cream sauce made from flour, milk, and butter, then ladled over toasted bread. The dish was filling and could be prepared in massive quantities, making it practical for feeding hundreds of men in segregated mess halls. The flavor was salty and rich, the cream sauce coating the tongue, while the beef provided chewy texture and protein. For many black soldiers, this was their first encounter with this particular preparation, different from the pork-based breakfast of home. Yet, it became familiar through repetition, another taste of military life that soldiers learned to accept and even appreciate. Fried apples with pork sausage was a breakfast that brought Appalachian and Southern traditions into mess halls where black soldiers from mountain communities found comfort. Apples were sliced and fried in the rendered fat from breakfast sausages until they softened and caramelized, their natural sweetness intensifying while absorbing smoky, savory flavors from the pork. The combination of sweet fruit and salty meat created a balanced plate that satisfied both cravings. For soldiers who grew up in Virginia, Tennessee, or the Carolinas, this breakfast tasted like autumn mornings at home. Black cooks who understood regional foodways prepared this dish with care, knowing that familiar flavors could lift spirits during difficult times. The apples added vitamins, while the sausage provided essential protein and fat for energy. Liver and onions appeared on mess hall breakfast menus as an affordable protein source that black cooks transformed into something more palatable than its reputation suggested. Beef liver was sliced thin, soaked briefly in milk to reduce its strong flavor, then dredged in seasoned flour and fried alongside sweet onions that caramelized in the same pan. The liver developed a crispy crust while staying tender inside, and the onions added sweetness that balanced the organ meat's richness. For soldiers who had eaten liver at home, this was familiar fare, though others required convincing. Black mess hall workers understood that proper preparation made all the difference, cooking the liver quickly to prevent toughness. The iron and nutrients in liver helped maintain soldier health during demanding training and deployment. Griddle cakes with cane syrup were a breakfast that reminded black soldiers of Sunday mornings and special occasions in their family kitchens back home. The batter was made from flour, eggs, and buttermilk when available, poured onto hot griddles, and flipped when bubbles formed across the surface. Cane syrup, darker and more complex than maple syrup, was drizzled generously over stacks of golden cakes. This was celebration food made ordinary by military scale, yet it still carried sweetness that soldiers craved. For men from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, cane syrup tasted like home in a way nothing else could match. Black cooks took pride in their griddle cakes, achieving consistent texture and golden color despite cooking for hundreds. The warmth of this breakfast provided comfort during cold mornings far from family. Red-eye gravy with country ham was a breakfast that brought deep Southern tradition into military kitchens where black cooks shared regional knowledge. The gravy was made by deglazing the pan used to fry country ham with strong black coffee, creating a thin, intensely flavored sauce that was salty, bitter, and slightly sweet all at once. This was poured over the ham and served with biscuits or grits for soaking up every drop. For soldiers from Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia, red-eyed gravy represented home cooking at its most authentic. Black mess hall workers who knew this tradition prepared it with the same care their grandmothers showed, understanding that the coffee had to be strong and the ham properly cured. This breakfast was sustenance and heritage combined on a single plate. Hog maw and potatoes was a breakfast that spoke to no-waste traditions Black soldiers brought from rural communities where every part of the animal served a purpose. The hog's stomach was cleaned thoroughly, seasoned, then slow cooked with potatoes until both became tender and richly flavored. This dish was hearty enough to fuel men through demanding physical training and carried the taste of home kitchens where resourcefulness was survival. For soldiers from the Deep South, hog maw represented family meals shared around wooden tables before dawn. Black cooks who knew how to prepare this dish properly brought dignity to ingredients others might have discarded. The potatoes absorbed savory juices, while the hog maw provided protein. This was heritage food connecting soldiers to generations of wisdom. Buttermilk and cornbread crumbled together was a simple breakfast, sustaining Black soldiers who remembered this combination from childhood mornings in the rural South. Cold buttermilk was poured over crumbled cornbread in a bowl, creating a tangy, filling meal requiring no cooking that could be eaten quickly before morning duties. The cornbread softened in buttermilk, becoming almost porridge-like while retaining enough texture to satisfy. For soldiers far from home, this breakfast tasted like summer mornings in grandmother's kitchen, a connection to simpler times. The buttermilk provided calcium and protein, while cornbread delivered carbohydrates for energy. Black mess workers understood that this humble combination carried emotional weight beyond its nutritional value, offering comfort and familiarity. Chitlins and scrambled eggs was a breakfast that appeared in mess halls where Black cooks brought Southern soul food traditions to military kitchens. The chitlins, cleaned thoroughly and simmered until tender, were chopped and folded into scrambled eggs with onions, creating a dish that was rich, savory, and deeply familiar to soldiers from the South. This combination was not for everyone, but those who grew up eating chitlins recognized the care required to prepare them properly. Black cooks who knew this tradition understood that chitlins represented more than food. They carried history of resourcefulness and making something delicious from what others discarded. The eggs balanced the intensity of the chitlins, while onions added sweetness. This breakfast was heritage served hot, connecting soldiers to home. Fried streak-o-lean with eggs was a breakfast that stretched limited resources while providing essential fat and protein for Black soldiers in training camps. Streak-o-lean, the fatty bacon-like cut from pork belly, was sliced and fried until crispy edges formed while the fat rendered out into the pan. Eggs were then cooked in that flavorful grease, absorbing the smoky, salty richness that made this simple breakfast memorable. For soldiers who grew up during the Depression, streak-o-lean was familiar fare that represented making do with affordable cuts. Black cooks understood how to render the fat properly, achieving crispiness without burning. The combination filled stomachs and provided calories needed for physical demands of military training. This was practical cooking that turned inexpensive ingredients into satisfying morning meals. Pork brains and scrambled eggs was a breakfast that appeared occasionally in mess halls where Black cooks prepared traditional Southern dishes that might seem unusual to outsiders. The brains were cleaned, parboiled, then scrambled together with eggs into a creamy, rich mixture that was mild in flavor despite its challenging appearance. For soldiers from rural communities where nose-to-tail eating was standard practice, this breakfast was familiar and appreciated. The texture was soft and custard-like, the brains adding richness to the eggs without overwhelming them. Black cooks who knew this preparation understood that it provided excellent nutrition and represented food traditions passed through generations. This was not everyday fare, but when it appeared, soldiers who recognized it found comfort in its familiarity. Molasses and butter on hot biscuits was a breakfast combination that carried sweetness and richness into morning meals for Black soldiers missing the tastes of home. Fresh biscuits were split open while still steaming, spread with butter that melted into the soft interior, then drizzled with dark molasses that pooled in the crevices and soaked into the bread. This simple combination provided quick energy from the sugars, while the butter added satisfying richness. For soldiers from the rural South, molasses was a familiar sweetener that tasted like childhood mornings before school and church. Black mess workers ensured biscuits were served hot enough for butter to melt properly, understanding that temperature mattered for this simple pleasure. The combination required no special ingredients, just good timing. Salmon croquettes with grits were a breakfast that Black cooks created from canned salmon, transforming shelf-stable protein into something that tasted homemade and special. The salmon was drained, mixed with egg, flour, and seasonings, then formed into patties and fried until golden brown and crispy on the outside. Served alongside creamy grits, the croquettes provided protein, while the grits offered filling carbohydrates that sustained men through morning duties. For soldiers whose mothers made salmon croquettes on Sundays, this breakfast carried memories of family tables and special meals. Black cooks took pride in achieving the right texture, crispy exterior giving way to moist, flavorful interior. The combination was economical yet satisfying, proving that canned ingredients could become something worth anticipating. Hoe cakes with sorghum syrup connected Black soldiers to agricultural traditions, stretching back generations through Southern and African American foodways. These simple cornmeal cakes were made from meal, water, and salt, cooked on griddles until golden and slightly crispy at the edges. Sorghum syrup, dark and earthy with complex sweetness, was poured over the hot cakes, soaking into the corn and creating a combination that tasted like the rural South. For soldiers who grew up eating hoe cakes at family tables, this breakfast transported them home momentarily. Black cooks understood the simplicity and significance of this dish, preparing it with same care their mothers and grandmothers had shown. The hoe cakes required little but delivered much, providing energy and comfort in equal measure. Fried green tomatoes with eggs appeared as a seasonal breakfast when unripe tomatoes were available, and Black cooks brought Southern tradition into mess hall kitchens. The tomatoes were sliced thick, dredged in seasoned cornmeal, and fried until the coating turned golden and crispy, while the fruit inside stayed firm and tangy. Served alongside fried eggs, the combination balanced the tomatoes' brightness with rich, runny yolks that served as natural sauce. For soldiers from Georgia, Alabama, and the Carolinas, fried green tomatoes represented late summer gardens and harvest time. Black cooks who knew this preparation understood that proper cornmeal coating and hot oil were essential for achieving the right crunch. This breakfast was a taste of home that reminded men of family kitchens far away. Crackling bread with coffee was a breakfast that brought the taste of hog killing time into military mornings for Black soldiers who remembered this tradition from rural communities. The bread was made by folding crispy pork cracklings into cornbread batter. Before baking, creating a dense, rich bread studded with bits of rendered fat that added smoky flavor and satisfying crunch. Strong black coffee washed down the bread, cutting through the richness with its bitterness. For soldiers from farming communities where families butchered their own hogs, crackling bread represented self-sufficiency and the wisdom of using every part of the animal. Black cooks who made this bread understood its cultural significance, preparing it when cracklings were available. This was heritage baked into every slice, connecting soldiers to home.
Red-eye ham and coffee gravy provided a bold, bracing start to the morning with a flavor that lingered long after breakfast was done. Thick slices of country-cured ham were seared in a heavy skillet until their edges browned and their fat rendered into a savory base. Into that sizzling pan went black coffee, which deglazed the salty bits and created a thin, smoky gravy. The sharp bitterness of coffee balanced the ham's rich saltiness, producing a sauce both surprising and addictive. Poured over warm biscuits or spooned onto grits, the gravy soaked in and carried a gentle caffeine kick that woke up the senses. Families across the South prized this dish for its simplicity and strength, a reminder of farm mornings when nothing went to waste. Red-eye ham and coffee gravy reflected the ingenuity of African-American cooks who transformed pantry basics into something unforgettable. A breakfast that spoke of resilience and tradition with every deep, savory bite. Okra fritters were once a common breakfast food that made use of one of the most iconic crops in African-American gardens. Fresh okra would be chopped, mixed with cornmeal and seasoning, and fried in small patties until golden brown. The result was crisp on the outside, tender on the inside, and full of earthy flavor that paired perfectly with hot coffee or milk. For families, okra fritters were both affordable and filling, using whatever the garden provided in abundance. They could be eaten plain with cane syrup or alongside eggs, making them versatile as well as practical. The dish reflected the deep agricultural roots of African American communities, where nothing grown went to waste. It was also a way of starting the day with something satisfying before long hours of labor. While okra remains popular in Southern cooking, the fritter form has faded from breakfast tables, leaving behind only the memory of mornings built on thrift and flavor. Cold cornbread and milk was often called the poor man's cereal, but it was more than a label, it was a lifeline. Day-old cornbread, often too dry to eat on its own, was crumbled into bowls and covered with milk or buttermilk, creating a filling meal that could be eaten quickly before school or work. For children, it was breakfast. For adults, it was sometimes supper, proving its versatility. It carried a tangy, comforting flavor that became familiar in many Southern households. What made it special was not the taste alone, but the reminder that nothing was wasted, not even stale bread. In communities with little to spare, this dish represented survival and practicality. Cold cornbread and milk was part of the rhythm of daily life, a dish that carried generations through hard times and into mornings of determination. Even with its simplicity, it gave people what they needed to keep going during days that demanded courage and endurance. Red-eye gravy with country ham was a bold wake-up call that combined salty meat drippings with the sharp bite of black coffee. After thick slices of cured ham were seared in a cast-iron skillet, a splash of hot coffee was poured into the pan to release every bit of smoky flavor. The result was a thin, savory gravy that was spooned over grits or biscuits, adding a punch of flavor that jolted sleepy mornings to life. This dish reflected a no-waste mindset, where nothing from a prized ham went unused. Grandparents remember the rich aroma of coffee mingling with sizzling pork as a smell that meant breakfast was nearly ready. Served alongside eggs or even spooned over rice, red-eye gravy gave working families the hearty start they needed for long days in the fields or factories. It was simple, strong, and unforgettable, a dish that carried the warmth of tradition and the energy of early morning labor. Hot water cornbread patties delivered the satisfying crunch of cast iron frying to countless Delta kitchens, where cornmeal was as common as morning sun. Cooks stirred hot water into fine cornmeal until the mixture held together, then shaped it by hand and slid it into shimmering oil. The patties sizzled and crisped, forming a browned crust that gave way to a tender interior. The method required no milk or eggs, only the steady skill of a practiced hand, making it accessible and quick. Families ate these cornbread rounds with eggs, greens, or a simple drizzle of honey when sugar was scarce. In many homes, the sound of batter hitting hot oil signaled breakfast was ready, filling the air with the nutty aroma of toasting corn. Hot water cornbread patties celebrated resourcefulness and flavor, reminding everyone that the best dishes often came from the simplest combinations of grain, heat, and love, passed down through generations of African American cooks. Cornmeal mush with sorghum syrup was a staple breakfast that reflected the creativity and resilience of African American kitchens in the South and beyond. The mush itself was simple, made from cornmeal cooked slowly with water or milk until it thickened into a smooth porridge that filled bowls generously. On its own, it was filling but plain, so families would drizzle sorghum syrup over the top to add sweetness and richness without needing expensive sugar. Sorghum was cheaper, widely available in the South, and deeply tied to farm life, making it a household staple for generations of working families. This dish was eaten hot at the table with spoons, sometimes with butter or milk added, or cooled in pans and sliced to be fried later as griddle cakes. For children, it was a comfort food that brought both energy and warmth on school mornings when bellies needed to be full. For adults, it was a dependable way to stretch limited supplies into a hearty start to the day, ensuring no one went hungry. Cornmeal mush with sorghum syrup was never fancy, but it was practical, satisfying, and deeply tied to the rhythm of working life. Eggless mayonnaise biscuits were one of those recipes that came out of necessity, but lingered in kitchens long after shortages eased. Families discovered that a spoonful of mayonnaise could stand in for eggs and fat, binding dough into soft, fluffy biscuits without using precious rationed ingredients. During the Civil Rights era, this recipe stuck around because it was practical and affordable, perfect for households where money and supplies were always stretched thin. Mothers could bake a tray in the morning, serving them plain, with syrup, or alongside whatever small scraps were available. Children often carried leftovers in their pockets to school, eating them between lessons for a bit of comfort and energy. The taste was familiar and reliable, even if the origins came from harder times. Eggless mayonnaise biscuits symbolized more than just thrift. They carried the determination to keep families fed through resourcefulness. They became a quiet staple on breakfast tables that fueled long days of work, activism, and resilience. Hot water cornbread cakes were the kind of breakfast that filled kitchens with warmth before the sun even cleared the trees. Cornmeal was mixed with boiling water until it formed a thick batter that could be shaped into small patties by hand. Each cake hissed as it touched the hot skillet, the edges browning to a perfect crisp, while the center stayed soft and tender. Families loved these because they required only a few pantry staples, yet tasted like a feast when served with butter or a drizzle of cane syrup. Grandparents remember the sound of sizzling cakes as a gentle morning alarm, calling everyone to the table. These cakes were hearty enough to keep field workers energized through the day and simple enough for children to help prepare. Whether eaten plain or split open to cradle a slice of fried fish from the night before, hot water cornbread cakes proved that true comfort often comes from the simplest ingredients and a steady hand at the skillet. Sweet salmon croquettes with grits turned pantry staples into a breakfast feast that felt both luxurious and familiar across African American communities of the 1970s. Canned salmon was flaked into a bowl with onions, breadcrumbs, and a little seasoning, then shaped into neat patties ready for the skillet. As they fried, the croquettes developed a crisp golden crust while staying moist inside, their aroma mingling with the gentle steam of creamy stone-ground grits bubbling nearby. This pairing brought together the coastal traditions of the South and the practicality of modern kitchens, where canned fish kept well and stretched to feed a family. Some cooks added a squeeze of lemon or a pinch of cayenne for extra brightness and heat, while others folded in fresh herbs from backyard gardens. Served with a side of sliced tomatoes or greens, salmon croquettes with grits delivered protein, comfort, and a taste of heritage, showing how everyday ingredients could be elevated into a soulful breakfast worth savoring. Fried catfish and cornbread was a breakfast plate that reflected the abundance of rivers and the skill of African American cooks in the South. Catfish could be caught at little cost, cleaned, coated in cornmeal, and fried crisp in cast-iron skillets. Paired with hot cornbread fresh from the oven, the meal was both hearty and nourishing. It gave workers the energy needed for long days in the fields, and children the strength to get through school without hunger. Families often made it on weekends when fishing provided enough to share with neighbors, turning it into a communal meal. The taste was bold and rustic, with a combination of crunchy fish and soft bread that defined comfort. Though fish is not often associated with breakfast today, fried catfish and cornbread once stood proudly on morning tables. It remains a reflection of resilience and resourcefulness, showing how nature and tradition came together to sustain communities. Cracklin cornbread was a dish that brought a little joy and extra nourishment to the table, especially during times of struggle. Made by folding pork cracklings into traditional cornbread batter, it added both protein and crunch to a meal that was usually simple. Pork skins and fat were cheap and rarely wasted, and incorporating them into cornbread gave households a way to make breakfast more sustaining. Served hot from the skillet, Cracklin cornbread was filling enough to carry families through demanding days. It became a staple for marches, farm work, or long hours in factories, offering both flavor and strength. Children remembered the satisfying crunch, while adults valued the resourcefulness that turned scraps into sustenance. Cracklin cornbread reflect buttermilk hoe cakes were thin golden cornmeal pancakes that turned an everyday staple into a morning delight. A batter of cornmeal, buttermilk, and a little melted butter was poured onto a hot cast-iron griddle where it spread into crisp-edged rounds. The cakes cooked quickly, developing a toasty aroma that filled the kitchen and tempted everyone to grab one straight from the pan. Served with honey, cane syrup, or a pat of fresh butter, they offered a satisfying balance of tangy buttermilk and sweet corn. Families loved them because they were inexpensive, fast, and endlessly versatile, equally good with fried eggs or a bowl of stewed fruit. Grandparents recall how hoe cakes were often cooked outdoors on flat hoes or griddles over open fires during harvest seasons, a practical method that gave the cakes their name. Each bite carried the taste of tradition and the resourcefulness of cooks who knew how to turn simple ingredients into a breakfast worth remembering. Field pea and rice hash turned a simple pot of peas into a hearty breakfast that fueled long days with ease. Black-eyed peas were simmered with onions, garlic, and a little smoked meat until tender, then spooned generously over steaming white rice. The flavors melded into a comforting bowl of earthy beans and fluffy grains that filled stomachs and lifted spirits. In the 1970s, this dish connected generations, recalling the Hoppin' John traditions of New Year's Day, while serving as an everyday morning staple in many African American homes. Some families stirred in hot peppers for a gentle heat, while others finished with a drizzle of pepper vinegar for brightness. Field pea and rice hash proved that a few inexpensive ingredients could yield both nourishment and rich flavor, keeping families strong and satisfied. It celebrated agricultural roots and the creativity of cooks who understood that true comfort comes from a well-seasoned pot and the love shared around the breakfast table. Molasses milk was one of those simple breakfast drinks that could fill an empty stomach and give strength to start the day without costing much. A mug of warm milk would be stirred with a generous spoon of blackstrap molasses until it turned dark, thick, and sweet, creating a drink unlike anything else. For families without access to expensive sugar, molasses was a cheaper and more nutritious option, packed with iron, calcium, and minerals that were badly needed in homes stretched thin. Children often drank it before school, while adults relied on it as a quick energy boost before heading to work in fields, factories, or other labor. It was easy to prepare, affordable, and comforting on cold mornings when heavier meals were not always possible or practical. The taste was bold, with a deep sweetness that lingered, giving a sense of fullness and warmth that plain milk never offered. It was more than a drink. It was a way of stretching resources while caring for a family's needs with love and creativity. Today, it has disappeared from most tables, but it once stood proudly as a daily ritual of comfort. Stewed prunes with grits might sound plain today, but it was a dish that kept households nourished and children strong. Prunes were affordable, dried, and easy to store, making them a reliable sweetener when sugar was limited. Simmered until soft and paired with steaming bowls of grits, they turned into a balanced meal of fiber, sweetness, and filling grains. Large families often leaned on this combination because it could stretch far with little cost. For children, stewed prunes made breakfast feel less plain, while adults valued the strength it provided for long workdays. It was also a dish that traveled through generations, passed down as a memory of lean years and perseverance. Families carried bowls of this simple breakfast before marches, school, and shifts, finding strength in the comfort of familiarity. Stewed prunes with grits became a quiet but powerful dish of the civil rights era, proving that even the humblest meals could carry dignity and hope.
Which forgotten military breakfast would you want to taste? Drop your answer in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more stories of heritage and resilience from history's kitchen.